The cemetery was on a hill outside Asheville, and the wind that morning came down off the Blue Ridge like it had a personal grievance against me. I remember the cold first because everything else was harder to remember. I am Edwin, 71 years old, retired structural engineer, and on the second Tuesday of November, I stood under a borrowed black umbrella and watched 4 men I had never met lower my wife Margaret into the red North Carolina clay. There were 5 people at the service. Me, the funeral director, a young pastor from a church Margaret had attended exactly twice, and 2 of Margaret's friends from her old book club who had driven up from Hendersonville. That was it. 46 years of marriage, and the weather had drawn a bigger crowd at the gas station that morning than her funeral did. I had my phone in my coat pocket. I am not a phone person. Margaret used to laugh at me for keeping the same flip-style phone until 2019, but that morning, standing there with rain running off the brim of my hat onto my shoulders, I kept reaching for it like a man checking a wound to see if it still hurt. Nothing. No missed call from my son, no text from my daughter, no voicemail. I had told them both. I had called them both. I had called personally. Tuesday, 11 a.m., Riverside Cemetery, Asheville. My daughter had said, "Daddy, I will absolutely be there." My son had said, "Of course, Pop. Wouldn't miss it." When I got home that afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table without taking my coat off. The house smelled wrong. Margaret had this habit of leaving a little dish of orange peels on the back of the stove, slow drying them for tea. The peels were still there. The house still smelled like her, but only barely, and the smell was the worst part, because it told me she had been here recently enough that the air still remembered her. I opened Facebook on the iPad she had bought me for Christmas 3 years ago. I am not a social media person either, but Margaret had set me up with an account so I could see pictures of the grandkids. The first thing the algorithm showed me was my daughter, Catherine, 41 years old, a photo of her and her husband, Brad, on what looked like a sailboat, golden hour light, 2 glasses of white wine. The caption said, "Sometimes you just need to disconnect and recharge. Annapolis weekend with my person." Post at 9:47 that morning, which would have been about 15 minutes before they began the service. I scrolled. There was my son Theodore. Theo, 44, standing in front of a podium at some real estate investors' conference in Charlotte. Big banner behind him. He was shaking hands with a man in a navy suit. The caption was written by the conference organizer. "Honored to host keynote speaker Theo for our Q4 summit." Posted at 11:12. While we were lowering his mother, I sat there with the iPad in my lap, and I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I did not cry that afternoon. I had cried so much in the 6 weeks Margaret was in hospice that I felt like something inside me had been wrung out and hung on a line. What I felt instead was a cold, slow, methodical thing climb up out of my stomach and settle in my chest. It felt almost like the day I figured out my first boss in Greenville was running a scam on the structural reports back in '78. That same calm. That same quiet. The same feeling of, all right then, now I understand. The doorbell rang at 8:30 the next morning. I had been awake since 4 cells. I had made coffee, 2 cups, because I still couldn't break the habit of pouring one for her. I had watched the light come up over the back fence. I was wearing the same clothes I had worn the day before. My son was standing on the porch in a quarter-zip pullover and dress slacks, holding a paper bag from Bojangles. My daughter was behind him in workout clothes and a North Face vest, holding a coffee carrier. They both looked rested. My daughter's hair was straightened. My son had clearly shaved that morning. "Hey, Pop," he said, and walked past me into the house. "Brought you some breakfast. Figured you weren't eating." "We're so sorry about yesterday," my daughter said, kissing me on the cheek. She smelled like sunscreen in November. The flight got completely messed up. Brad's fault, honestly. We tried. I closed the door. I did not say anything. They sat at the kitchen table. Margaret's table. The oak one I had refinished myself in 1994 in the garage of our first house in Greenville. My son set his briefcase on the floor next to his chair and I noticed it for the first time. He had brought a briefcase to a condolence call. He had not brought a briefcase to the funeral because he had not come to the funeral. But he had brought one this morning. "Daddy, sit down," my daughter said. "We brought you a sausage biscuit, the good kind." I sat. The chair scraped against the floor and the sound was too loud. My son took a long sip of coffee and exhaled like a man getting ready to deliver bad news to a client. I watched him do it. I watched him compose his face. "Pop," he said, "I know yesterday was hard. I know we weren't there, and that's something I'm going to have to live with." The keynote was locked 8 months ago. 40,000 people watching online. I couldn't pull out 2 days before. Mom would have understood. She was practical that way. Mom was practical that way, I repeated. She was. My daughter put her hand on top of mine. Her wedding ring was new. A bigger stone than the one Brad had given her 10 years ago. I had not noticed it at Thanksgiving last year. Maybe it was new. "Daddy," she said, "we need to talk about a few things. Practical things. I know the timing is awful, but we're all here, and there are some decisions that just need to be made before they get harder." "Decisions about what?" My son cleared his throat. "About the house, about Mom's estate, about what comes next for you." I watched him pull a folder out of his briefcase. A manila folder, neat, with a label maker label on the tab. The label said Morgan E.S. Tate Prelm. He had made a label for it. He had used a label maker. Mom didn't leave a will for it. He had used a label maker. "Mom didn't leave a will," he said. "I checked with her attorney already, so under North Carolina intestacy law, the estate is going to go through probate. You get the spousal share, but a portion comes to me and Catherine as her direct descendants. It's nothing personal. That's just the law. You called her attorney." "I had to, Pop. Somebody has to start the process." "When did you call him?" He paused. My daughter looked at the table. "Last week," he said. Margaret had been in the ground for less than 24 hours. He had called her lawyer the week before, while she was still in hospice. While I was sleeping in a recliner next to her bed and feeding her ice chips because she couldn't swallow water anymore. He had called her lawyer. "The house," my daughter said quickly, like she was changing the subject before I could land on it. "The house is the main thing, Daddy. We had it appraised informally. It's worth around $620, maybe $650 in this market. Asheville is hot right now. People are paying ridiculous money for craftsman bungalows in this neighborhood. You had the house appraised." "Informally, Daddy. Just a friend of Brad's. Just to know where we stand. While your mother was dying." "That's not fair." I leaned back in my chair. The clock above the stove was the one Margaret had bought at the Mass General Store in 1989. It made a tiny tick I had stopped hearing 30 years ago, and which now sounded like a hammer. "Tell me what you want," I said. My son slid the folder across the table. "We think the smart play," he said, "is to list it now, before spring. There's a window of about 6 weeks where Asheville inventory is low and out-of-state buyers are still active. You sell the house, you take your spousal share, you buy a nice condo somewhere on one level. We've actually already looked at a couple of places, Pop. There's a brand new development up by Biltmore Park. Beautiful units. Gym, pool, the whole deal. You'd love it. There's one with a little patio," my daughter added. "South-facing. You could put your tomatoes out there." "My tomatoes." "Yes. On a third-floor condo balcony." "Daddy." I opened the folder. Inside was a printed listing agreement with a realtor I had never heard of. A market analysis. A floor plan of a condominium with the unit number circled in red pen. A document titled, "Heirs Agreement for Sale of Real Property." My name was already typed in the signature line. "Who is the realtor?" I asked. "Brad's cousin," my daughter said. "Of course she is." "Pop, don't be that way." I looked at my son. He had Margaret's eyes. He had always had Margaret's eyes, that strange green-gray color that changed depending on the light. But the thing behind the eyes was not Margaret. The thing behind the eyes was a man who had calculated, weeks in advance, exactly how this conversation was going to go. who had practiced the soft voice, who had bought sausage biscuits because he knew I liked them, who had brought his sister along as cover. "How long have you two been planning this?" I said. "We weren't planning anything, Pop. We were preparing. There's a difference." "How long?" He sighed. My daughter was looking at her phone. 6 months, he said. Maybe 7. When the doctor said hospice was the right next step, we just wanted to be ready. We didn't want you to have to deal with all of this in the fog. We were trying to help. "And what about your share, son?" "What do you mean?" "You said you and your sister get a portion." "How much?" "Pop, that's just the law." "How much?" He looked at the folder. He did not look at me. "After your spousal share, the remainder splits. Catherine and I would each get around $180 if the house sells at $650. $180,000. Each? Yes. On the day after your mother's funeral." My daughter started crying then. It was a real-sounding cry, the way she used to cry as a teenager when I told her no about something. The kind of cry that was a tool, not a feeling. "Daddy, please don't make this ugly. We're all hurting. We just want this to be done so we can grieve in peace. Mom would not have wanted us fighting." I stood up. My right knee did the thing it does. The click that has been there since the second surgery in 2015. I walked over to the back door and looked out at the yard. Margaret's roses were dead from the frost. She had been planning to mulch them in October, but had been too weak. "I want both of you to leave my house," I said. I did not turn around. "Pop, leave. This is not just your house. This is the family home." I turned around then. My son had stood up too. He was a tall man, taller than me. He had always been taller than me. He used the height now, leaning his hip against the table, the way he probably leaned on the people at his investor seminars. "This house," he said, "is going to sell whether you cooperate or not. The law is on our side. Mom died without a will. We are her heirs. You can be reasonable and walk out of here with 800 grand, or you can drag it out for 2 years and pay lawyers and walk out with 6. Your call, Pop. Either way, the house sells. Out. Pop. Get out of my house." They got out. My daughter was still doing the crying thing. My son did not say goodbye. I heard his Range Rover pull out of the driveway. I stood in the kitchen, and I looked at the manila folder on the table. I picked it up. I walked over to the trash can. I dropped it in. Then I lifted the bag out of the trash can, tied it, walked it out to the curb, and put it in the bin. Then I came back in, sat down at the kitchen table, and I let myself cry because Margaret had been right about everything. She had told me, 2 weeks before she died, that they were going to do this. She had said it from the hospital bed in our bedroom, the one the hospice people had set up next to the window so she could see the dogwood. She had taken my hand, and she had said, "Edwin, listen to me. When I am gone, the children are going to come for the house. You have to be ready. I have done what I can. Look in the cedar chest. Promise me." I had thought she was confused from the medicine. I had said, "Honey, don't worry about that, just rest." I had kissed her forehead. I had not looked in the cedar chest, because I had not believed her, because some part of me still thought of my children as the small versions of themselves who used to fall asleep in the back of the Ford station wagon on long drives. The cedar chest had been Margaret's grandmother's. It sat at the foot of our bed, and we used it to store the quilts her mother had made. I had not opened it in maybe 4 years. I went upstairs. The bedroom was exactly as Margaret had left it the morning the ambulance took her to hospice. I had not been able to make myself change the sheets. I knelt in front of the cedar chest. My knee popped. I lifted the lid. The quilts were on top. Margaret's wedding ring quilt, the one her mother had finished in 1979 for our anniversary. A baby quilt that had been Catherine's and then Theo's. I lifted them out, one by one, and set them on the bed. Under the quilts was a flat metal lockbox, the kind you buy at an office supply store. There was a small brass key taped to the top of it with a piece of masking tape, and Margaret's handwriting on the tape said EDN only. I sat on the floor for a long time before I opened it. Inside the lockbox were three things: a thick legal envelope, a small digital voice recorder, the kind people use to dictate notes with a post-it on it that said, "Play a me," and a sealed letter with my name on the front, written in her handwriting from before the medicine made her hands shake. I opened the letter first. She wrote, "My Edwin, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I am so sorry. I am sorry to leave you, and I am sorry to leave you alone with this. You should not have to do this on top of grieving me, but I have done what I could to make it as simple as I knew how." She wrote that she had known about the children for a long time, longer than I had. She wrote that Theo had borrowed $210,000 from us 6 years ago for a real estate deal in Greenville that did not exist. She had let him have it because he was our son, and because she did not want me to look at him differently. She wrote that he had never paid us back, and that every time she had reminded him, he had said he was waiting on a closing. The closing was next month. The closing was next quarter. The closing never came. She wrote that Catherine had taken $63,000 from her own personal account, the one she had inherited from her mother, for what Catherine had called a consulting business that turned out to be a lifestyle blog that lasted 4 months and then quietly disappeared. Catherine had never offered to repay it. Catherine had bought a new car instead. She wrote, "I did not tell you these things, Edwin, because I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting you. I told myself you would be heartbroken. The truth is, I was the one who could not bear to see your face when you understood. I am sorry. I should have told you. We should have stood together. Maybe if we had, they would not have become what they became. I will carry that to wherever I am now." She wrote that when the diagnosis came back in February and the oncologist used the word aggressive, she had known immediately what would happen when she was gone. She wrote, "I have seen this play out twice in my own family, Edwin, with my Aunt Ruth and with my cousin Patrick's father. Money makes strangers of children. I would not let it happen to you." She wrote that she had gone to see an attorney named Linda Royer in Hendersonville, by herself, on 3 separate occasions in the spring and summer, that she had transferred her individual ownership of the house. The house had originally been hers, given to us by her father in 1986, and she had kept it in her name alone all these years, something I had never fully understood and had never questioned. She had transferred it into my name alone in May. She wrote, "The transfer is not a will, Edwin. A will can be contested. A will goes through probate, and the children can fight it and tie it up and bleed you for years. A deed transfer between living people with a mental competency assessment from Dr. Patel signed and notarized on the same day, with 2 unrelated witnesses, is something else. Linda told me this is the strongest instrument she has ever drafted in her career. I am of sound mind. The doctor said so. The witnesses said so. The transfer was clean and clear. The house is yours, my love, solely. Absolutely. They have no claim on it. They never did, technically, but now they really do not." She wrote that she had set up a separate trust with the proceeds of her father's old farm in Madison County, which she had sold quietly in March without telling me, for $240,000. The trust was for the grandchildren, Theo's 2 boys and Catherine's daughter, education only, held until age 22. The trustees were Linda Royer and the manager of the local credit union, 2 people Theo and Catherine could not bully or get drunk with. The children could not touch a penny of it. The grandchildren would have it for college, and not before. She wrote, "Tell the grandchildren about me when they are old enough, Edwin. Tell them I love them. Do not tell them what their parents did. Let them love their mother and father the way our children should have loved us. Be the soft place I cannot be anymore." She wrote, "There is one more thing on the recorder. I am sorry, my love. I am so sorry you have to hear it. But you need to know. You need to be sure. I made it so that when the moment came, you would not doubt yourself. You would not soften. You would not let them back in out of love or guilt. Listen to it once, then do what you have to do." She ended the letter. "I have loved you since the day you fixed my father's porch railing in the summer of 1975, and would not take any money for it. I have loved you for every day of the 46 years and 7 months since we said yes. I will love you in whatever comes after this. Be free, Edwin. Be free. Margaret. I sat on the bedroom floor and I read that letter 3 times before I picked up the voice recorder. The recording was 4 minutes and 22 seconds long. The timestamp said October 11th, 3 weeks before she died. It started with the sound of someone walking into the bedroom. I could hear Margaret's oxygen concentrator running in the background. She had set the recorder on the nightstand, hidden behind the lamp. It was my son. Mom, how are you feeling? Margaret's voice was thin, like a piece of paper. I'm tired, sweetheart. I know, I won't stay long. I just need to talk to you about something while Dad is at the store. What is it? Mom, I need you to think about something. About what you want to happen. Theo, I did not want to talk about this now. I know, but we have to. Pop is not going to be able to handle the estate alone. You know how he is. He overthinks everything. He calls a contractor for a leaky faucet. He cannot manage a $600,000 house and the money and all of it. Your father has managed our finances for 40 years, Theo. Mom, please. He's 71. He's slowing down. I see it. Catherine sees it. We just want to make this easy. There's a document. It's just a small thing. It puts the house into a family trust. Catherine and I are the trustees. Dad has lifetime occupancy. It doesn't change anything for him. It just protects the asset. I am not signing anything, Theodore. Mom. No. There was a long pause. When my son spoke again, his voice had changed. The softness was gone. There was a thing underneath it that I had heard before, once, when he was 19 and I caught him stealing cash out of Margaret's purse, and he tried to convince me I had miscounted. Mom, listen to me. If you don't sign this, here's what's going to happen. You die. No will. Probate. We file as heirs. We will tie that house up for 2 years, easy. We will spend $20,000 of Pop's money on lawyers. We will sit a forensic accountant on every check you've written for the last 10 years. We will allege diminished capacity from the chemo. We will make him sit in a deposition for 8 hours and answer questions about every disagreement you two have had since 1979. We will do this, Mom. I do not want to, but I will. You would do that to your father. I would do that for this family, for the long-term wealth of this family. Pop is going to die in a few years too, Mom. Math is math. We are protecting the asset across generations. This is what people in my world do. Get out. Mom, get out of my room, Theodore, right now. Mom, you're emotional. Let me get out. There were footsteps, a door closing, then silence. Then Margaret, talking quietly into the recorder, breathing hard. Edwin, she said, if you are hearing this, I am so sorry. I did not know what he would say. I did not know it would be that ugly. I have it now. I have it on record. He cannot deny it. Use this if you have to. Burn it after. I love you. I am so sorry. I love you. The recording ended. I sat in the bedroom until the lights started to go down. I did not move. I do not remember thinking anything at all. Then I went downstairs and I called Linda Royer in Hendersonville. She remembered me. She remembered Margaret. She said, Mr. Morrison, I have been expecting your call. Your wife told me you would call within a week of her passing. I have everything ready. I am so sorry for your loss. Can you come down on Friday? I went on Friday. I drove the parkway down the Pisgah and watched the light come through the bare trees, and I thought about Margaret driving this same road, alone, for 3 appointments with her attorney, while I was at home thinking she was at her book club or at the doctor or at the grocery store. She had built a fortress around me, and I had not known. Linda Royer was about my age. Steel gray hair, no nonsense. The kind of woman who had probably negotiated 1,000 difficult divorces and never blinked. She walked me through every document, the deed transfer, the competency assessment from Dr. Patel, the notary record, the trust for the grandchildren, ironclad, with 2 co-trustees and a clause that prevented either of my children from ever serving in any capacity related to it. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "I am going to be direct with you. Your wife was the most prepared client I have ever had. She knew exactly what was coming. She built this so it would hold. If your son and your daughter contest any part of it, they will lose, and they will pay your legal fees when they lose. Because we wrote that into the trust language as well. They cannot touch you. They cannot touch the house. They cannot touch the grandchildren's money. The only thing they can do is be ugly about it. And we have the recording for that. My son and daughter are going to call lawyers. Let them. Their lawyers will tell them what I just told you. This is the cleanest set of documents I have ever drafted. Your wife made me work for that fee, Mr. Morrison. She made me work." I drove back up the parkway with the documents in a folder on the passenger seat. I stopped at an overlook near Mount Pisgah. I sat in the car, and I watched a hawk make slow circles over the valley. The letters came within 10 days. Both my children had lawyered up. Theo's attorney was some firm out of Charlotte with marble in the lobby. Catherine's was Brad's cousin's husband, which was the funniest thing I had read in weeks. The letters made the predictable claims: undue influence, diminished capacity, a wife in the late stages of terminal illness coerced by a husband with control issues. The usual. Linda answered every letter within 48 hours. She included, with her second response to Theo's attorney, a transcript of the recording. She did not send the audio file. She sent the transcript with a cover letter that said, "The audio file is in our possession and will be entered into evidence if your client elects to proceed. Please advise your client that any contestation will trigger the fee-shifting clause in the trust." Theo's lawyer dropped the case in 4 days. Catherine's lawyer dropped it in 9. Brad's cousin's husband, it turned out, did mostly traffic violations. Catherine called me. She left a voicemail. She was crying. She said, "Daddy, I don't know what Theo said to Mom. I had no idea. I swear to you, I had no idea. Theo brought me into this. He told me you were not handling things and we needed to help. Daddy, please. I love you. I am so, so sorry." I did not call her back, not because I did not love her. I loved her so much it was a physical thing in my chest. I did not call her back because I had heard the part of the recording where she said, on a separate visit 2 weeks before Theo's, that the house should go to her because Theo already had his. I had skipped over that part the first time. Linda had pointed it out to me. Theo called me once. He did not leave a message. I sold the house in March. The market was indeed hot. I got $685,000. I put $100,000 into the grandchildren's trust on top of what Margaret had set up. I put $200,000 into a separate annuity for myself. I gave $50,000 to the hospice that had taken care of Margaret. The rest I held in cash. I moved into a small 1-story cottage in Black Mountain, 15 minutes from where the cemetery is. It has a screened porch that faces east. I sit out there in the mornings with my coffee, and I watch the fog come up off the creek. I have a little garden and raised beds because my knee will not let me kneel anymore. The tomatoes did fine this past summer. My daughter was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right that the south-facing patio would work for tomatoes. They just had to be at the right height. I see my grandchildren once a month. Theo's wife arranges it. She found out about the recording somehow, I think Catherine told her, and the marriage is on thin ice from what I can tell. She brings the boys over for Sunday afternoons. We make pancakes. We go to the train museum in Spruce Pine. They are 8 and 10, my grandsons. They do not know about any of this. They know that Grandma is gone and that she loved them and that Grandpa lives in a little house with a creek behind it. Catherine's daughter is 12. Catherine drops her off for weekends sometimes. We are polite to each other at the door. Catherine has lost weight. She looks tired. Brad left her in the spring. I do not know if it was related. I do not ask. My granddaughter and I have started a project of going through Margaret's recipe box and cooking one recipe per visit. The chicken and dumplings turned out so good last month I almost cried. Theo does not come. Theo and I have not spoken since the morning he sat in my kitchen and told me I had two choices. I do not know what his life looks like now. I hear from his wife that the investment firm has had some setbacks. I do not feel anything when I hear it. Not satisfaction. Not sadness. A kind of flatness, like reading a weather report for a city I used to live in. I go to Margaret's grave every Sunday afternoon, weather permitting. I bring her zinnias in summer and pine boughs in winter. I sit on the little iron bench her book club friends bought and had installed for me, and I tell her about the week. I tell her about the tomatoes. I tell her about the pancakes with the grandboys. I tell her that her recipe box is finding new hands. Sometimes I tell her I am angry with her. Not for what she did, but for how long she carried it alone. I tell her she should have told me about Theo's loan. About Catherine's blog. About all of it. I tell her we could have faced it together. I tell her she did not have to protect me from our own children. But then I think about what she said in the letter, about being a coward. And I think about how I would have been if she had told me back in 2018 that our son was a thief. I think I might have refused to believe it. I think I might have made her feel worse for telling me. I think she knew me better than I knew myself, and she chose her timing the way she chose everything, which was carefully and with love. I was a structural engineer for 43 years. I know what it takes to build something that holds. You need the right materials. You need the right joints. You need to anticipate the loads before they come. Margaret built me a structure that would hold after she was gone, and she did it while she was dying, with chemo in her veins, driving an hour each way to an attorney's office I did not know existed. She built me a house I could live in, and she did not let me help her build it, because she knew I could not bear to. I will live in it for whatever years I have left. If you are watching this, and you have a wife or a husband who looks at you the way Margaret looked at me, the way she looked at me even at the very end, with her hand in mine and her eyes saying everything her voice could no longer say, then love them harder. Tell them the things. Don't make them carry it alone the way Margaret did. And if you have children who have started to look at you like an asset and not a parent, see it. See it early. Don't tell yourself the story I told myself for 30 years. Which was that they would grow out of it, that they were just busy, that the next holiday would be different. Some of them do grow out of it. Some of them don't. You owe it to yourself to know which kind you have, while you still have time to do something about it. Margaret used to say that love without limits is not love, it's just permission. I thought it was one of those things she said to be clever. I understand it now. What would you have done in my place? Would you have signed the listing agreement? Would you have made room for them at the table again? Would you have opened the cedar chest sooner, or never at all? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. I am still learning at 71 what people do when they are pushed to where I was pushed. I want to know. Margaret, if you are out there listening somehow, the tomatoes did fine this year. The grandboys made pancakes. The dumplings were good. I am okay. I am free. I love you. I will see you when I see you. I think about it now, sitting on the screened porch with my coffee going cold, and I keep coming back to one simple thing. Nothing in that kitchen on the morning after Margaret's funeral happened by accident. Theodore did not become a man who labels a manila folder Morrison Eastate Prel in a single day. Catherine did not learn to cry like a tool in a single afternoon. Those two people sat across from me and showed me exactly who they had been turning into for 30 years. And the only reason I was shocked was because I had refused to look. That is the part I have to own. A man does not get blindsided unless he has been closing one eye on purpose. Margaret saw it before I did. She saw it, and she was too tender to break my heart with it, so she carried it alone, and she paid for that silence in ways I will never fully measure. There is a lesson there I almost missed. Love that hides the hard truths is not the highest form of love. It is the most exhausted form, The strongest love tells you what you do not want to hear while there is still time to do something about it together. If I had known about Theodore's $210,000 in 2018, I do not know what I would have done, but I would have done it with my wife, not after her. The other thing I keep turning over is this. Decency is not an inheritance. We thought we were raising honest children because we modeled honest lives. We were not. We were raising children who learned that the bank window was always open. Every time Margaret wrote a check and did not ask for it back, every time I waved off a missed birthday call with, "They're busy," we taught two small humans that we were not real people with limits. We were a resource. And resources in this country, in this century, are something you optimize. They optimized us. That was on us as much as it was on them. What I want anyone listening to take from this is plainer than it sounds. Be honest with the person who shares your bed, even when honesty costs something. Watch your grown children the way you would watch any adult who shows you who they are. Build the paperwork while your hands still work. And when the moment comes, and someone you love sets a folder on your kitchen table with your name pre-typed on the signature line, find the cold place inside you that knows the difference between family and theft. That cold place is not cruelty. It is the last gift your decency gives you. Margaret built me a structure that held. I intend to live the rest of my years inside it, not as a man who was wronged, but as a man who was loved well enough to be set free. That is the version of strength I want, and I think it is the version most of us can reach if we are willing to open the cedar chest a little sooner than we want to.